Welcome, TTB community. I am Bob Demena, and here with me, as always, is the very punctilious Elliot Shipley. Do you know what that means? Punctilious, yes.
That sounds like punctual. Does it have anything to do with time?
Well, no. It says showing great attention to detail or correct behavior.
Okay.
So I guess sort of you can see the correlation between punctual and punctilious, right? Just being correct, being on top of things, showing attention to detail. So you can see so I guess maybe punk.
There's some parallels there.
There's the prefix punk maybe has whatever that means in Latin is where they
punked.
Yeah. Look at us.
That's a TV show, right?
We should start a phonetics podcast next.
No, we shouldn't. There are definitely experts that are way better at it.
Yeah, we'll leave it to them. I can barely pronounce the words I know. So, who do we have today?
Well, today's guest is Mag Diamond, and she's the author of Bowing to Elephants, which is a travel memoir from her. She is probably our most experienced travel guest that we've had, and she proves that age is nothing but a number. And she discusses how her childhood molded her into the person that she is and her passion for travel. And then we talk about how travel has shaped who she has become. And the conversation was really interesting. I think she's definitely the oldest guest we've had on the show, when typically a lot of our guests are young digital nomads. She kind of is one of the first of the, not digital nomads, but nomads in general. And our conversation was very enlightening and it had a lot of deep emotions tied to it, and she shared a lot about her life story, and it was really an honor to talk with her.
Yeah, so before we get into the conversation, very briefly, I want to just run through what we have going on behind the scenes. The Traveler's Blueprint Community Group, a private Facebook group, we're very active there. If you want to speak to us directly, probably the best place to do it. And we provide information on the podcast and things like that, sort of behind the scene questions or more intimate questions to ask you regarding our guest. You can subscribe anywhere you're listening to this, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just give us a subscribe. And if you really like us, give us a rating. It goes a long way in helping us get better guests. Our website is pumped full of content. We have the cheat sheet that you get for free when you sign up for the newsletter. We have consulting services that I will virtually sit down with you one-on-one and go through the intricate details of your trip to make sure you have the most efficient trip possible. And you will.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. So we have Become Your Own Travel Agent videos. They're going to be courses that we're going to be providing you that allow you to plan your own trip. Essentially, what I provide you in the consulting service, the videos are going to help you be able to do that on your own. And those are in production. They should be coming out very soon. We have a travel roundtable series where it's 4 people that come onto the podcast, 6 people total, including Elliot and myself, and we break down different topics. We have a group discussion on those topics. They've been very fun to record. They've been very informative, and we really like that series so far. And then, we're everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Follow us, give us a follow, say hello. And that's it. So without further introduction, please give it up for our next guest, Mag Diamond.
Welcome to the Traveler's Blueprint. Start designing your next adventure.
Mag, welcome to the Traveler's Blueprint podcast.
Well, thanks a lot for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Today, we would love to talk to you about your latest book that was released in September of 2019, Bowing to Elephants. This is your first book that you've ever written, and you are in your 70s, right?
That's right.
And this is a compilation of essays that you've written over your life from different journals that you've kind of compiled and joined into a story that kind of knits together your whole being and travel as a journey through life, but also geographically.
Right. Yeah.
And so tell us about it a little bit. Why write it now?
All right. I could be a little bit of a smartass and say, well, why not? I mean, but when you've played with writing all your life, which I've been recording experience since I was about 11 years old, keeping journals and so on, and imagining that you would be a published writer one day, and then you go on your way and you do all these various things, like you get married, you have children, you go to college, you teach, and you still write, and you're still writing, and then there's a certain point at which you realize that if you're going to create a book, which you feel would be a worthy book, you better get to it, because when you're in your 60s and staring at your 70s, you don't have an infinite amount of time left. So it's like, okay, it's time to do it. So that was sort of the trajectory, of the kind of the birthing of the thing ultimately. But I've been doing it all along, and it's just a matter of making it happen into a form that I could, convince somebody to publish.
Right. And you were writing down your travels as you did it, correct? You had travel journals that you were able to use to compile the book?
Right.
Right?
I kept notebooks every time I went anywhere. I always bought, a new notebook. I mean, I have an obscene number of notebooks that have, 4 or 5 pages written in them, and then I stopped and turned away from it. But every time I went on a trip, I sort of vowed to document the trip. So I would do a day by day, reporting of my experience, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to remember stuff. And, because I keep busy doing, I mean, I do a lot of different things when I travel. I do a lot of museum stuff. I do a lot of eating out because I love food so much. And I do a lot of, visiting obscure places and going into churches that look interesting. And so I wanted to be sure that I had, all that kind of recorded, because I guess I felt that, one day that would be useful for me down the line. And I also took photographs. That's another thing I generally did along with keeping the journal.
Yeah.
So that was helpful too.
In your book, you mentioned something interesting about memory, and it's something that I've always been interested about with memories, and the fact that they're so fallible and your memories change as you grow older. And journals are a great way to keep those memories true, because I have not written in a journal. I mean, I have maybe 2 or 3 days of writing from a journal as part of like school assignments in when I was still in single digits. And I look back on those and I'm like, oh, wow, that was really fun. I don't even remember that. But then I think about other aspects of my life where I haven't written in a journal. And I think, is this memory real, or is this kind of pieced together from what people have told me, or part of my imagination mixed with reality?
Well, that's what kind of stinks about taking pictures and not recording it in a journal. It's sort of like the difference between a movie and the book. The movie is never as good as the book, right? Because the book is just so much more descriptive. You account for what's going through your mind. You As you taste the meal, as you smell it, the sounds that are around you. I went on a 2-week honeymoon with my wife, and it was the first time we recorded our any travels in a journal. And I've gone back a few times and looked at it, and the way we did it was I would write a day, she would write a day, I would write a day, and it surpassed anything we could possibly do with pictures, because now I can go back and it's our honeymoon through both of our perspectives, and there's joking in it. There's sort of like back and forth in the writing where one of us may have made the other one late, and it's just really beautiful to read, or like you read how we felt, and especially on your honeymoon when it's just your emotions are running high. It's such a I could not recommend recording your travels in a journal. I mean, maybe your entire life, really. I know a lot of people do that. I haven't done that. Maybe I would like it, but I couldn't recommend doing it for at least your travels enough, based on my experiences.
Well, I know a lot of people that do that when they travel, and they don't do it any other time. And it's because when you go on a trip, you're bombarded with experiences. You really are, and there's no way you're ever going to be able to retain all that. So it's kind of wonderful to be able to record it. And what I try to do at the end of the day is just make sure I've covered the things that stood out for me. It's not like I'm going to write about every single thing I did during that day, but it's really about the things that stood out. You know, whether it was this, wedding couple in Venice in the middle of winter who were posing for photographs on San Marco Square. I mean, that was an astonishing thing to see. And it was like a painting, and it was just like this an amazing event. And I don't imagine that I would have forgotten it, but it was really important for me to write that one out. And or sometimes writing about the food that you're having, because maybe the food triggers something really kind of internal, like something emotional in you. It makes you feel really good, to have that dish of pasta or whatever it is. And it's great to preserve that, because you're not going to remember it later. You're just not.
No. Yeah, memory is really weird. So I kind of have this unscientific theory that your memory is finite. It's sort of like a hard drive, and once you fill it up, you start to erase things, and and it doesn't necessarily need to be like the earliest memory, but just like random things. Like you just can't keep everything in there. And a good example is last night I watched a World War One movie, and just a few years ago when I was in college, I could tell you exactly how World War One started, which countries were involved, and I really understood it. And now, years later, I'm watching this, and I couldn't remember. I remember the overall picture, but I couldn't remember the details like I used to. And I'm like, I've learned a lot over the past few years. Maybe my mind just had to push that out to make room for this new stuff. But that's sort of like a.
Was it 1917?
I watched 1917 last night. Very good movie. It was actually an incredible World War One movie.
It's on my list. I haven't seen it.
On my list too.
Very, very, very good. Highly recommend it. Yeah, there's no war in it.
I think that's an interesting analogy you're making, and I think that it's true that when I put that book together and I was doing my detours back into the past, back into the distant past of my life, of my childhood, that's where I was in much more vulnerable territory, because I was relying on the memory and on I didn't have journals from when I was a 6 and 7 year old or 8 year old or whatever like that. So I was relying on my own, memory carried forward, which of course was partially informed by stories that people told me of what happened, during certain times. So that's why you say memory is imperfect, and any person that writes a memoir, if they think they're going to tap into the memory and make it really solid and, super sharp, accurate, and this and that, I mean, they're fooling themselves, because you can't. And so you take what you can remember and you use it to the best of your, sensibilities and your intelligence, and you build on it, and then you can develop a scene or, a situation that you can describe. But for a while it really bothered me, because I wanted to be able to remember more, again, of childhood. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, no, look, I've lived a long life. I'm 70, whatever. I mean, the chances of holding on to stuff that happened to me when I was 7 years old, pretty slim. I mean, I was used to be envious of people who could remember all these things from childhood. And then I sort of had to give up on that. I said, some people are able to zero in on certain events of their childhood and talk to you about it as though it's crystal clear, to them, and super detailed. But most people can't. Most people can't do that. And so you really have to rely on your sensibility and the powers of invention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of fun actually when you get into it, because you know the personalities that are involved, and you dig back into the experience, and then you can kind of embellish from there. Um, but yeah, that was a tricky piece of the journey, that, you know, making that stuff really come alive.
Yeah.
A big part of your journal and your journey throughout life was your mother. And unlike a lot of people that traveled the world and traveled at a young age, you weren't a military brat. Your mother was just very involved in art and music, and you moved to Italy for a time, then back to San Francisco and a few other places in between. Um, how did that impact you as a young adult? Because you'd been traveling by the time you were 18 for roughly 10 years.
Well, we were in Europe for 3 years, from the time I was 11. We came back when I was 14. Then I finished up high school. I did 1 year in San Francisco of high school, and then I did 2 more years in New York, where my mother decided to move to New York. So we moved from San Francisco to New York. And then from New York, I went to college in Ohio. So yeah, I mean, um, and I needed to get away from my mother. You know, it would have been wiser for me probably not to go right to college, but she and I had such a really trying relationship, that I needed to get out of her sphere. And so I went off to Ohio, which I knew nothing about. It was the middle of the country. I mean, I was raised on the West Coast, you know.
No one knows anything about Ohio, so don't feel bad.
We just
But
lost our Ohio audience.
I've been that's a bit of bopping around. You know, I was used to moving around. When we were in Italy, we moved, you know, we moved from Florence to Rome, and then in Rome we moved another time. My mother was a very restless character, and I guess, you know, I just was conditioned to that. And as a young married person, I got married very young, and I wanted immediately to go off and travel, you know, even though I had a child. I figured out how we could do it, and got my husband interested in it. And so we started traveling, you know, when we hadn't been married maybe 5 years, and we were, you know, and I'd figured out that we were going to go to Europe and go to do Ireland and England and that sort of thing. So, I wanted to keep moving, I think, you know.
Yeah. So although your relationship with your mother was somewhat tumultuous, the travel still stuck with you and you still enjoyed it. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more, you know, kind of stimulating and distracting than traveling, you know, and if you are having a difficult time in your life, traveling can take your mind away from that, and you can go off and explore something new and different. I did that much later in my life, after I divorced my husband and went off on another adventure with another person. I did a ton of traveling then. I didn't have kids to take care of. I didn't have any responsibilities, and I was living with somebody who wanted to travel like crazy too. So we just did it. But we had a very strange and fraught relationship, and I found that the traveling kept me from thinking about how I was in a very unsatisfactory relationship. So it was a little bit of like an escape thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So something that I do want to get into are your experiences and your transition to mindfulness and Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So as we sort of talked about before we started recording, mindfulness and meditation is something that I've been trying to get into actually the past few weeks. So it's still very new to me. It's something that I think can be very beneficial to, it will be very beneficial to my mind and kind of relaxing my body. And so my plan is to sort of work out in the morning and then take the last 10 minutes before I go jump in the shower to just close my eyes and meditate. And, you as being an experienced meditator, and I actually did sign up for your program too, 21-day program. I did. I signed up for it. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to starting that. But can you just, I guess, first explain to me the transition that you went through during your travels, that you realized that this was something, that this was profound, and then maybe kind of explain what it means to you today and how you're keeping up with it?
Well, it didn't happen to me when I was traveling. I mean, the transition into that, choosing that kind of life didn't happen when I was traveling. It really didn't. It happened when I was living in northern New Mexico, and I was living with this problematic character that I just referred to, and I was really I had left my marriage. I'd been married for a long time, for 25 years. I left my family behind in California. I'd started this whole new life, some of which was satisfactory. I mean, and I had a teaching career and that teaching writing actually to students, but I was really unhappy. I felt that I had made a terrible mistake by, just trashing my marriage. I felt like I was with a person who had no capacity to have to love or to respect, and I was wondering like crazy how I was going to extricate myself from this. And I started working with a woman who did body work, and she was also a Buddhist, and she told me something that she noticed in me. She said that she saw that I carried a lot of suffering, and I told her she was right, that I was deeply unhappy, and despite all my sort of success on the outside, I looked very successful on the outside, and probably a lot of people didn't think I was unhappy. But in any case, I told her that I was suffering, and she said, if you trying, sitting meditation might be a really wonderful thing for you. And then I said, oh no, I can't meditate. Meditation's too hard. I have to shut my mouth for too long. I mean, I have to be quiet. And we all know that one way we cope with difficulty is by keeping ourselves distracted and busy. But she told me in a way that made me believe that I could do it. And I found a meditation group that I could go to, a sitting group. And I went there, walked in one evening to this group, and there must have been about 6 people sitting there. And it was like amazingly peaceful. And I sat down and I was able to calm myself right away. And after I spent the 2 hours there with these people, I realized that I had dropped into something that was really profound. And I felt like I'd found a home for myself. And so I just kept going to group sittings. I kept attending those sittings, and I meditated on my own. And I realized that I felt better about myself. It didn't solve some of my problems, but at least it allowed me to cope with the kind of the ache in my heart. So yeah, I became a regular. And then eventually, the retreats where you are silent for, a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time or whatever it is. And I was able to really see clearly that I was a worthwhile person. I was able to kind of have love for myself that I had never found. I was able to understand that suffering is not something that you can push away by, drinking too much or going on lots of trips. It's really not going to work. The suffering keeps coming in our lives, and uninvited, of course, and so your job as a meditator is to just allow it to be there and allow the difficulty to be there and to accept it, because as you accept it, it fades away. Part of the core of suffering is when you push back against it and resist it and say, no, 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 I'm not going to be unhappy. No, 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 no. No, allow yourself to be unhappy and allow yourself to feel sad. Allow yourself to also feel delight and joy, but it's the thing that people have difficulty with is the suffering part.
Yeah, we we sort of live in a world where you're supposed to frown upon emotions like anger and sadness. And something that I think this is funny, but part of, raising a child, which I'm doing, I have a 2-year-old, is teaching them to understand their emotions. So as they feel something, and it might be sadness or anger, they obviously they know they feel something, but they don't know what it is. And so it's your job as a parent to define it for them. You need to say what you're feeling is this because of this, and it helps them absorb that feeling and understand, just put, context to it, and it helps them grow. And it's very important to do that. But as you get older, you're then told, your mental health is not a priority, or, it's, you need to push it to the back and you shouldn't deal with it and things like that. And, I mean, yeah, to sit down and like you said, it's all about just being able to understand it. And once you understand something, I don't know, it's much easier to figure out how and when to deal with it, rather than just saying, you know what, nope, I don't have time. I don't have time to be angry. I got to do this. I got to get this done. And a lot of people do that. I do that all the time. I do it all the time. And it's something that I'm really trying to change about myself. So like,
the Buddha called it waking up. I want to add a little something because this is kind of important. The Buddha was, called the awakened one by many people, and this thing about accepting the difficulties, the darkness, the sadness, the anger, it's becoming conscious. It's becoming conscious of what is really going on, and what is right before you. And, it could be pain in your body, and it could be agitation in your mind. It could be, any number of things, irritation at noises that go on outside your environment or whatever. But your job is to just pay attention to it.
mm-hmm.
That's why, it's a moment by moment thing. And when you're sitting silently, you are paying attention to all the experiences that are coming to you. So that's waking up to it.
Yeah. And that's something that I think just people in general need to take in. Like, an example I've heard is, so this is something that I'm guilty of. Anytime I have any downtime, if I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'm sitting at the dentist office waiting to get called back or whatever it is, I automatically go in my pocket, I take out my phone, and I kill the time. Whether I waste it on social media, or I'm reading news, or I'm going through my emails,
right.
I have to do something. How can I fill this 15 minutes? And I know you don't automatically think like, take the 15 minutes and just sit and just sit with your own thoughts. Go back on what you have going on in your life. Go through your files, your internal files, and sift through and make sure everything's in order, and calm yourself down. You don't have to fill every waking minute of every day. And so that's what's sort of driven me to meditation. And I'm really excited to get into this. And
I'm glad for you, and
yeah.
just to say something else about that, you're not really filling your time. You're really wasting your time, because, your time is not, you don't benefit from, I've been guilty of all of that you're talking about, and I'm a lot older than you are, but these devices are seductive, and, I used to take my iPhone when I walked the dog, and I'd get to the park and I'd sit on the park bench, and then I'd look at my iPhone instead of looking around at the things that were going on in the park. So, everybody does it because we're a society where everybody is stimulating themselves, 24/7, and to sit on a park bench, or just at your kitchen table and just sit and be, is kind of foreign these days, because people feel like you've got to be doing something.
Right.
Yeah, but it's wasting your consciousness, because when you're going through your emails and looking at your news or doing your social media, you're not really making anything happen. You're not really learning anything, really. You're entertaining yourself.
Yeah.
What you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's I'm going to take baby steps. I'm definitely not going to dive into it, but yeah, and so going back to mindfulness and as it relates to travel is sort of, to me, in its own way, a form of meditation. You're going out and you're having these experiences, and they're profound, and you're learning. I don't know. I think travel sort of has helped me snowball into being more in tune with myself, and then therefore allowing me to be a better future meditator. Does that make sense? Is that, yeah. And yeah.
I mean, travel is a moment by moment experience, okay? And meditation is a moment by moment experience as well. And the key to having it work for you in travel is that you have to slow yourself down enough. You can't be racing through your day or through your week. I mean, some people travel in very crazy ways, I think. But if you slow yourself down enough, you can have the moment by moment experience. You can get up in the morning and you can, look at the sun coming in your window, and then you can get yourself dressed and go have your breakfast, and then you can go out on your day, and you can be noticing all these things and registering them. And if you're moving fast, if you're saying to yourself, oh, well, I have to get to 3 museums today, plus I have to go shopping and I have to do this, then you're not having the moment by moment experience. You're on that trajectory where you're headed toward a goal. But really, what is the goal? Is the goal the end of the day where you can say to yourself, I've done the 3 museums and I've gone shopping and I've done all these good things. I've checked all those things off my list. Because, some people travel like that. They decide that they have to accomplish these things.
I think that's Bob.
I mean, I am guilty of that in a lot of ways. The ways that the ways that I travel are determined by what there is to see. Something that I was actually just telling Elliot yesterday is that this podcast and speaking to travelers of all different types, of all different nationalities, is that I've learned that there are deeper ways to travel, and I'm looking forward to trying those out in the future. But I definitely, in the past, always made it a point. It was always, what architecture, food, and that was it. Like, I needed to accomplish certain tasks, and it was never just go and feel and understand and exist. And so now that's where my mindset as I travel is going to be. And so that's a question I have for you. When you're going to these really interesting countries like Bhutan, Bhutan fascinates me. Are you going there with, how do you approach that? Because you're going there with the mindset of experiencing things on a deeper level. But then I feel like if you were to go there and prioritize that too much, it takes away from it too. Like there's like this like quick catch-22, right? So how do you approach travel to ensure that you get what you want out of it, which is a meaningful, deep experience?
Well, when I I was just thinking about this earlier. I was thinking about the things in my heart and in my mind and in my experience that take me to certain places. So when I went to Bhutan, I was driven by really one thing only. I wanted to learn about how Buddhist practice is woven into the way of life there. It's a Buddhist country through and through, that Bhutan. It is, I'd heard about this, I'd read about it, or, and so on. But I wanted to experience that. I wanted to kind of see that as it manifested. And so I had a private guide, and I told him what I wanted to do. I said, I don't want to I'm not going to trek in the mountains because that's not what I do. Plenty of people go to Bhutan and they go trekking because of the mountains being so glorious and everything. Mm-hmm. I said, I want to go to monasteries and temples, and I want to look at Buddhism in this country. I want to look at it as a practice which is the way of life. I want you to show me. I said to him, I want you to show me this. And it was a great mixing of personalities, because it turned out this young man who was my guide, he had once been a monk. He had once signed on to be a monk, and then realized that it was too rigorous and too demanding for him, and he gave it up. But he had a very affectionate feeling for the monastic life and for all the people involved in the spiritual teachings and in the spiritual world. So he took me to all these different places, and we did road trips where we got in the car and we went to certain villages and we saw the sites that were geographic, and that was all wonderful. But but wherever we went, it was very kind of conscious and mindful. And we would have conversations with people, or he would talk to people and then translate for me. I'd ask questions, and and we'd go sit in a room with the monks who were prostrating themselves and praying. And he would explain to me that this wonderful dent in the wooden floor, this beautiful wooden floor, had this indentation from people prostrating themselves over hundreds of years.
Wow.
So it affected the wood in the floor. And talked to me about all the little bits and pieces of the ritual and everything like that. And so it was, so anyway, I went with that, that was my intention. And I put myself in the hands, because when you go to Bhutan, you can't travel independently. They don't allow that. You have to travel with a Bhutanese person. They control it, which is good, because then
isn't there a daily visa or a daily cost associated with it too?
Yeah, there is a cost, and it's not cheap, but it's, the government really has been very conscious of or very adamantly, has decided they're limiting the people that come into the country. They're limiting the amount of time that people stay. And they are, and they're watching over them. They're not watching over them 24 hours a day, but you're under the wing of a person, or maybe a group, a couple of people who are responsible for your visit.
Yeah. And it's all to preserve the culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's totally like a happy, you've heard of the gross national happiness concept. This is a happy place. And even the people as poor as they look, they're happy. There are no police force in Bhutan. There's no cops.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
I find that so interesting.
There's no army.
Whoa. That is literally very foreign to me as an American.
I remember one of the
really
things
worth going to, you all. It's a far journey, but it's mind bending to go there. And
so one of the things you mentioned in your book is how the Buddhists in Bhutan would kind of collect the basic necessities of life and request it from people, just knocking on doors, asking for food, asking for basic clothing and materials, because they didn't have or use money in the same sense that churches in the United States use and request money. And you were very skeptical of that in the beginning, because these people were kind of begging and asking for this stuff. And you're like, are they really doing it? And then later in the book, you talk about trust with a Buddhist, and the person just said, you have to trust me. Like, trust is everything in Buddhism.
Well, one of the principles of Buddhism is telling the truth. Okay. You tell what is you speak what is real. You see what is real, and you speak what is real. And you speak with consideration and respect, and you don't speak out of bad intentions. So that's a core principle and it's called right speech. It's one of the It's one of part of the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. And so anyway, I don't remember that I expressed any skepticism about, you mentioned that I sounded skeptical about what people asking for.
Yeah. And
I don't remember where that was, because I think you're also not, you're not talking about Bhutan, but you're talking about
is this Burma?
Or Burma. Okay, Burma.
Yeah.
All right. So in Burma, the monks do alms rounds, and that's part of the monastic tradition, where they're not allowed to go buy food for themselves, so they have to go ask for food. Okay, so that's part of a total tradition in Burma.
Okay.
So was that something that you're referring to?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And that's true in all Buddhist countries. So it's true in Cambodia. It's not true. I did not see that occurring in Bhutan.
Okay.
I did not see monks going from house to house to ask for food. That they, not all Buddhists do everything the same way. But in the Southeast Asian countries, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, all those countries, the monks do this routine where they depend on the community for their sustenance. And the community prepares food, and as poor as they are, they give it to them.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the United States, like when you see people requesting stuff off the street, the first instinct is to avoid and not make eye contact because you think they're homeless and a beggar. And that is part of the daily life in the Southeast Asian countries. And it's just one more very foreign concept that I think Americans could, and maybe most Westerners could get on board with.
Never. It'll never happen.
Well, it all comes out of the deep regard that the community has for the people leading the spiritual life. So it's a way for the people who want to honor the monks who are not only practicing their own Buddhism, but they're teaching, and they're holding this lineage of wisdom, and they're valued for that. And so the way that the community can show how they value them is to feed them and also take care of their medical needs, so that in any given community in those Asian countries, the monks don't have to worry about getting medical care. They will be taken care of by their community. I mean, it's a beautiful paradigm, and it's a foreign paradigm to our Western, world, as
Yeah.
you've mentioned. I mean, it's very we're very suspicious of people. I mean, I know there are idyllic communities in the United States where people take care of each other in a wonderful, generous way, but it's pretty, it's not a very common thing.
Yeah.
No, as a nation, we're very individualistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Asia, it's very communal. It's all about the community. And I don't care whether it's even true in countries like China and Japan. I mean, they are very much about the body of people and not the individual.
Yeah.
Right.
When Vietnam too is another one where that's true. It's very community focused.
If we can, I'd like to transition and talk about how travel in your eyes has changed, because you've been traveling for close to 60 years and we've had very few guests that have been traveling that long. And the 50s was a time where there were a lot less people and traveling was not as accessible. And so a lot of these touristy sites weren't touristy. So if you can, please talk about what it was like when you first started traveling, how it is different now.
Well, an image that pops into my mind is I'm taking it from when I lived in Rome, which was back in it was back in my very beginning time when I was about 12. And we would go to the Colosseum my mother and I, and around the Coliseum. We lived where our apartment was close to the Coliseum, but we had this ritual of going to the Coliseum and giving food to the giving spare food to the wild cats. There were wild cats that were wandering all over that area, and there were these old Italian ladies that would come in their black outfits, and they would be bringing their kind of funny wrapped up things of portions of pasta and putting them out for the cats. And I actually have photographs of that happening. So we were right in the middle of real life there. I mean, this was 1957 or something like that. And, it's ancient history for a lot of people, that date. And now when you go to the Coliseum, all you see are tour buses, lines of people. I mean, it's the big dramatic thing, I think, for me. And I took my daughter and a couple of grandchildren to Italy a couple of summers ago. And, it's the worst time in the world to go to Italy, but we had to do it because of school. We couldn't bear the idea that we had to, for everything that we wanted to do, we had to stand on line for a really long time. Or when you went to the Trevi Fountain, the infamous Trevi Fountain where people throw the coins in and do all this, you couldn't even get close to the fountain. And the whole piazza around the fountain was just masses of people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and in order to get into the Vatican, to go to the Vatican Museum and do all that, you had to reserve, and then you had to have a guide take you in a group, and in order to expedite your experience, to get you in faster than if you were just trying to do it on your own devices, by your own devices. So it's become more complicated because there are more people.
Yeah.
And there's no good system. I mean, this isn't true for all countries, but Italy is popping up as an example because that's where it's so dramatic to me.
I know you recently went to Machu Picchu, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Did you go there earlier in the 50s or 60s?
I had gone to Machu Picchu earlier, not super long time before. So I went to Machu Picchu with this fellow that I lived with in northern New Mexico. He and I went to Machu Picchu, and so that was in the 90s at some point because that's the period of our time together. And then we stayed in a hotel right inside the park. There's a hotel, a nice hotel there. And we were able to get up in the and go out and wander the park before all the groups started to come. Wow. And that was like magic. So that happened in, like I say, the 90s at some point. Now I went just recently with my daughter and son-in-law, and that was just a couple of years ago. And it was madness. There was this, again, it's the buses, it's the lines. You can't go anywhere without there just being masses of people. Yeah. And you weren't allowed in. There wasn't the freedom that you had before.
You have time slot, right?
I mentioned that to people when I was there. I said that, I remember being able to walk out my hotel and just wander along into the whole complex. I remember what that felt like. It was astonishing.
But is there a solution to it? Because there doesn't seem to be, because you don't want to stop. That helps, but you don't want to stop people from having these experiences. You don't want to deter people from having these experiences. And so the only solution is to create these barriers and these queues and these booths that you need to check into to preserve them. Because if you just let people flood in, you lose they don't get preserved. They get damaged and overwhelmed. And so, unfortunately, the only thing that I think we can do is make people stand in line, make people buy tickets for certain time slots, or make people have guides that accompany them. I don't know. I wish there was another solution, but I don't know how else we can simultaneously preserve these landmarks while promoting them, because we want people to travel and experience, because it helps people grow.
Yeah, I think that that it is a matter of the numbers. The more people are going to these places. But, I've been to the Galapagos too, and there they have it down. I mean, they're able to control the numbers so beautifully, and they have very definitive rules of how you behave in the Galapagos. You might have heard about that. But, you're always under the control of a guide and several guides and naturalists and all the rest of it. And you walk on certain paths, and you are really, you're forced to be respectful of their rules for the sake of the wildlife and the environment. It works. I mean, and I think they limit the numbers of groups that come in at certain times. Now, the Machu Picchu thing is that's a little bit out of control as far as I'm concerned. I was very disappointed in the way it was when I went the last time, because it really took away for me from enjoying the magic of that place. That place is really an astonishing geography and place, and with all these masses of people and people trying to control all these people, it's like it's like being at a convention, and it's just too many. So I don't know what the answer is to that, but I know that with the Galapagos, they're really able to control it, as they're able to control it in the way that the Bhutanese control it when you go to Bhutan.
Raise the price.
Yeah.
Yeah, raise
at that
price.
point, you just limit the accessibility.
Yeah.
But what's wrong with that? In a way, I mean,
the only thing that I think is wrong with that is you have people who might not have the income but want to learn and want to experience, and then they can't, only because they don't have the funds.
Yeah, we had that conversation with Paulina on episode 14 regarding national parks, because they were going to be increasing the entrance fee to all national parks in the US.
Right.
And we discussed whether or not that was a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's still a gray area.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There is no answer. I don't know, because unfortunately, though, if I had to pick one, I would pick raising the price.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you essentially aid in their elimination and their deterioration, right? And eventually their significance. I don't know. And
it's the lesser of the two evils.
Right. Yeah. If you have to pick one, I don't know. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I mean, it's I'm all for everybody being able to have access to these magical places where great learning is possible. And I have to admit that the length of my my trajectory of my travels and thus my experience makes me more critical. I mean, and I'm when you get to be a certain age, you're a little set in your ways, and you would really rather have things be a certain way that's coherent and productive. And then you have to accept the fact, and you have to be Buddhist and accept the fact that that you can't control the universe. You can't control the numbers of people that are going places that you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can make conscious decisions to go to places in the off season, like to not go to Europe in the summer, to not go to I mean, I went to Venice in the middle of the winter because I really wanted that experience of it being different.
Yeah.
But I have the freedom to do that because I don't have a job, and I have an independent income, so I can go whenever I want. And I have this lovely freedom that many other people don't have. But I do want people to travel, and I want people to see the places like Machu Picchu and Galapagos and all that.
Yeah.
But I think that it needs to become a lesson in sort of respect for the place where you are, and an ability coexist with your fellow humans who are all trying to have the same experience,
Right. Yeah, I think respect is a large part of travel that a lot of people that do travel take advantage of and treat it as their own. And they feel some entitlement to do whatever they want in those areas. And I don't think that I know it's not sustainable. There's no way that we can preserve all of these heritage sites and everyone has the ability to treat it like their own.
No. One organization that I thoroughly, I support and love and talk about all the time, who have such a kind of an elevated consciousness about this, is National Geographic, and they do amazing trips. I've been on some of their, their so-called organized trips, and they do a great job of educating you. They do, and keeping you and reminding you of this sort of respectfulness factor, and depending on where you are, whether you're in an ancient site like Machu Picchu or in a precious landscape like the Galapagos. So you learn a lot. But then again, there's a price to pay for that. So it's down to, not everybody can afford to go on a National Geographic trip.
Mm-hmm.
And plenty of people do the Inca Trail and go to Peru and all that and do the Machu Picchu thing, on their own, because you can. You don't have to have a guide and a group and everything like that.
So the perfect resource is like a podcast, like, the Traveler's Blueprint, for example, which is free, and you can learn to be a mindful traveler and then do the trip on your own.
Shameless plug.
Etiquette of travel. Yeah. It's very, it's interesting for me to notice. One of the things I notice all the time when I travel is the things that irritate me about other travelers,
Yeah.
Well,
because naturally I think I'm perfect and I think I've got it down and I'm highly respectful and polite and all the rest of it. And then I watch these people go into great art museums and stand in front of masterpiece paintings and get their pictures taken and in other words, interfere with everybody else's experience of the art because they have to stand in front of a painting and get their picture taken. It's one of my great peeves. It's like, why can't you just why don't you look at the art? Why do you have to have your picture taken in front of it?
That brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. And I was reading your chapter on Venice, and I had the sudden realization that you and I may have been in Venice at the exact same time.
Oh, mm-hmm.
I was there. I did a 3-day weekend while I was studying abroad in Germany, and it was from January 25th to the 27th.
Right.
Did your 2 weeks there overlap at all?
That's right. I was there till the end of January. I went for a whole 2 weeks, and I know I came back at the end of January. I just came across my journal. I was sorting through some old journals yesterday, and I came across the Venice journal, and I saw the dates on it. Yeah, so that I was there. That we were there at the same time.
That is incredible. And
yeah.
I really hope I wasn't one of those people trying to get my picture taken.
You probably were.
I don't think I was, because I was there. I roamed the city mostly by myself. And you're right. It was a cold, damp winter, and there was no one there.
Yeah,
and
it was great. I love
Marcos Square was covered with like 3 or 4 inches of water because of the recent flooding. And it was really a weird experience. And I guess I need to go back in the summer because it did feel like a dead city at the time. It didn't feel like there were many natives. There were very few tourists. And it was kind of monotone in color, just washed out with grays and blacks.
Yeah. See, I love all that stuff. I also love color, but I had been to Venice countless times in tourist periods, periods of tourism, and hated it because I never could kind of figure Venice out. I never could feel like I understood the geography as well. I couldn't feel like I got a sense of what it was like to be an inhabitant of that city, which is it's a unique city, of course, But it was very lonely. And one of the things I was interested in experiencing was that sense of being this lonely kind of alone traveler and how that was going to feel. Because I spent, every day walking with my camera, around my, neck and my notebook. And it got very, very lonely. 2 weeks was a long time to do that. And there were a lot of things that were closed in Venice too at that time because it was the period after Carnivale, and it was the period between the Christmas holidays and Carnivale. So it was like this interim period where the Venetians all retreated and they closed up museums, they closed up businesses. They were just like on holiday. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny though. 7 years later and we're talking on a podcast.
Yeah, it was, I was really, I had a lot of fun finding things that I didn't, expect to find. I mean, and ruminating about the benefits of getting lost or not getting lost or discovering things you didn't know you were going to discover, because if you didn't worry about where you were going or how to get there, because in Venice, everything is confusing in terms of geography.
Yeah.
You're going to get lost all the time. And then you have to realize it doesn't really matter when you get lost.
It was great.
That's the fun.
It was great to get lost.
Sort of this metaphorical level where I realized that, so what's the worst thing about getting lost, in general, eventually you find yourself.
Right.
It's just why it bothers people getting lost. I think it bothers them because they feel like they're out of control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't know where you are exactly, geographically, then you have less control.
Yeah, I already feel my anxiety coming on just thinking about it. But I do agree with, especially cities like Venice. I learned that in Dubrovnik to just, my wife and I would just, you just go and you just walk and you explore and you look for new things and you just you go out of your way to remove yourself from what you already know about the city and try to find something new. And like, that's your priority. Let's walk until we find something new and interesting that we didn't know existed. And,
right.
And you kind of get lost in that process. And like that in and of itself is fun. And cities like Dubrovnik and Venice, you're not going to get lost. You're in a walled in, or you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. Do it. The experience is worth it. So.
Mag, before we get into into where people can find the book and some of your other social media and websites, we have been doing this rapid fire question segment, and Bob and I alternate asking 12 questions, and they are partially related to travel. Some is just to get to know you better. Okay. So please answer honestly and whatever comes to your mind first. Bob, you want to start?
All righty.
Yeah. Okay. Maggie, ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think of the word travel?
Freedom.
What home comfort do you miss the most while traveling?
My own bed.
That's a common answer. If you could swim in any liquid, what would it be?
The salt water of the ocean.
Ooh.
All right. Pick two animals that you would love to see fight.
Oh gosh, I don't want to see animals fight.
Or play.
Oh yeah, okay, 2 cats.
All right.
Would you rather drink wine or coffee the rest of your life?
Both. I'll go with wine.
Okay.
Please say hello in your favorite language.
Buongiorno.
If you can travel with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
My granddaughter, Morgan.
What is one item remaining on your bucket list?
The pyramids, Egypt.
Who is your biggest celebrity crush?
The Dalai Lama.
Ah,
That's a
we
good
have
one.
not had that one.
No.
This may be a tough one, but if you were stuck in one city for the rest of your life, which city would you choose?
Oh my God. That's really hard. I want to say Florence, but I also want to say Paris. So I'm sorry.
We can't make these too easy. So if you owned a yacht, what would you name it?
Rosie.
Who is your favorite Traveler's Blueprint podcast host?
Well, that's not fair.
I think you should probably just go with the person who asked the question.
That's you, right, Elliot?
Yeah.
Elliot, he's suffering for answers, so no one really answers Elliot.
No, I think you were the first one.
That's it. Those are all of them. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Can I ask why Rosie for the yacht?
It's just the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay.
Why?
I was just curious. I didn't know if it was the name of a close friend or relative.
No, my oldest friend in the world, a person I've known since we were 4. She had a great golden retriever called Rosie who died recently. So I guess maybe the image of Rosie popped into my mind. But yeah, it was just one of those lovely things that just bubbled up. And
yeah.
It's a very affectionate name to me.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very affectionate.
I think it'd be a good name for a yacht. I could see you sailing the Mediterranean,
Rosie?
stopping in
Rosie.
Yeah.
I don't think I could sail much in a yacht at all. Get seasick.
No, they're too confining.
Yeah.
So, all right, Mag. So before we let you go, please tell our listeners where they can download or buy your book, where they can find you on social media, your website, basically anything that they can do to research you and learn more about what you do.
All righty. Let's see. Okay, my website is magdiamond.com, MAGDIMOND. It's spelled without an A. There's a ton of information. I have a blog and all kinds of things. I have my guided meditation that's for offer there, which is really
free, right?
Lovely thing. It's called. It's bowing to. Let's see. What is it? It's magdiamond.com/gift. I think. Anyway, you go to the website and you would find it. I have a Facebook page, that's facebook.com/travelswithmag. That's my Facebook page. I'm at Diamond Mag on Twitter. I'm doing a weekly author discussion group on Facebook Live these days. It's every Thursday at 1:30 Pacific time. It's a lovely thing that's been going on for a couple of months now with different writers. And that's at facebook.com/travelswithmag. Again, it's on my author page. That's something I'm encouraging people to come and listen to because it's been a very lively little forum for conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna have to jump on that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's about a 40-minute deal every Thursday, and all kinds of different writers we're talking about lots of different ideas, but a lot of it is it's the theme of writing and the execution of writing and the kind of vision that writers hold.
Interesting. The Traveler's Blueprint currently has a travel book in production, so maybe we'll have to join you.
Yeah, it's called Writers Coming Together. That's the name of my program. Writers.
Okay.
Do you have any upcoming trips planned? Any post-pandemic?
Well, I had a great trip to Spain, all on the books until the pandemic. I had bought this trip at a charity auction, and it was going to start in Madrid and go to southern Spain with my daughter, my youngest daughter, who loves to travel with me. And we'd never done a trip just with ourselves and not with children, with young people. So I think the Spain trip will be the next trip that does happen when we are allowed to get on an airplane and fly away. Oh, I can hardly bear the idea of how much time it's going to be. But yes, want to go to southern Spain, Granada and Seville and all that.
Right.
Been there a long time ago, but I want to have some of that great Spanish food.
Yes. Yeah, I miss that very much.
Yeah. And I have to bone up on my Spanish first because I'm very keen on being able to talk to people when it's at all feasible. So I always get, I kind of try to bone up on.
And you are fluent in Italian, right?
You're pretty fluent, yeah.
And I mean, that should help with your Spanish, I think.
And it does, definitely. I mean, when I've gone to Mexico, I've been able to use, Spanish sort of fairly well. My French is very kind of, herky jerky kind of thing, but I can cope in French. It just takes me a while. Yeah. I probably have an atrocious French accent but I don't care. I just think that's one of the things I think is important is to try to communicate with people and not just assume they're going to speak English to you,
Yeah.
Be mindful of where you are and who you're meeting.
Exactly. Yeah. So, anyway, that's the vision. We'll hope that it can, emerge sooner rather than later. I have a year credit on my airfare that, so I'm hoping that bodes well for sometime next year.
Yeah.
Well,
we're hoping for you too.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Bowing to Elephants. If you're listening to this, go buy it, go read it, travel the world, learn to be a mindful traveler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get Bowing to Elephants on Amazon, but I urge people to buy it through their independent bookstores or Indie Bound, which is a website that tells you how to order from independent bookstores. So I'm a big, supporter of independent bookstores as opposed to the massive Amazon.
Right. Yeah. If you're listening to this, go check it out. Elliot and I both read it, loved it. And, Mag, thank you again.
I liked it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
This book was beautifully written, and this was a very different book and different information as related to travel than anything else I've ever picked up before. Because what I realized reading her book and now talking to her was that travel isn't always romantic. It isn't always a positive experience. In the beginning for Meg, she's associating travel with hardships with her family, with the relationships with her mother and things like that. So it was really interesting to see the revelation and the progress Meg had as a person growing up on the road with all of these different, new architecture, new relationships in foreign countries, and how it shaped who she was. And being able to talk to her today and have her reflect on those experiences with us on the podcast was really cool, really insightful, and just a brand new avenue for us to explore and learn about as it relates to travel.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, she talked about when we think about travel, we often think it's very romantic, not in the sense of like love and stuff, but in the sense of opening yourself up, new experiences that are good for you. And she definitely showed that there was another side of it. But it was a great honor to be able to talk to her, and she is a very down-to-earth traveler. And of all of the teachings that we like between Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, I think in her book she really talked about how Buddhism is one of the best teachings because it focuses on the self and morality from within, and which is why a lot of Westerners seek out Buddhism. And Bob, I don't know if you know of these two terms. I learned about them really recently, and I think they're really cool. One is omnism, which is basically a respect for all religions, but not thinking any religion is perfect. And then the other one is syncretism, which is applying teachings from all different kinds of religions into one. And basically it's this thing, it's inclusivity of all religion and acceptance of all religions in merging it into one religion on its own.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know. I'm not familiar with either of those terms, but I think I'm familiar with that idea or that philosophy, right? Neither one of us are very religious, but I think we both agree that a lot of the teachings in let's say Christianity, for that's the one we're most familiar with, the moral compass that it tries to set you on, and all those things we use, right? I feel
Mhm.
like I'm a very moral person without religion, and that's really interesting.
And it's one thing to think about religion, and you can be spiritual without having a religion, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think so. I think you definitely can. Yeah, that's interesting. It's something I need to learn more about. I actually
Yeah.
have the book Waking Up by Sam Harris, which
Yeah.
teaches you how to be spiritual without religion. I
Yeah.
have it on audio or Audible. I haven't gotten to it yet.
I read that last year or 2 years ago. I enjoyed it. It was a very different reading experience for me.
Yeah, I listen to his meditation app every single morning now. So I have Sam Harris in my ear every day for 10 minutes.
Nice.
After my workout, I sit down and I listen to him, and it's all about controlling your consciousness and understanding your consciousness, and it really allows you to sort of purge your mind of bad, I don't want to say bad thoughts, overwhelming thoughts, stressful thoughts,
Yeah.
and sort of uh categorizing them and making sure you are in control of those stressful thoughts and they are not in control of you.
Yeah. Amanda's been listening to it's a meditation headspace,
I'm
and
familiar with it. Yep.
she's been listening to that for I think 2 years now, prior to falling asleep, and she really, really loves it. It's basically mindfulness every evening for 10 minutes.
That's what I do, except in the morning, and that's essentially what Sam Harris is.
Yeah.
And the thing that, I don't know, meditation I gets a bad rap, but I think it's coming around as being more legitimate. Like some people I think look at it as hocus pocus nonsense, whatever you might,
Yeah.
But the thing that I think people should consider is, just like you want to work out your muscles and you need to work out your body, your mind is similar, and that the more that you practice something and the more you work it out, the better you are in control of it. And so
Mhm.
that's sort of the way I look at it. Meditation is really just working out my mind and being able to manipulate it however I want it to be, and not allowing my emotions to take control and
Yeah.
having to follow the lead of my emotion. It's very cool, very fun
It
stuff.
is. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. So, as you're listening to this, take a moment to subscribe to us on YouTube or whichever podcast platform you're listening on. If you've already subscribed, thank you. And maybe consider us giving a rating. If you've already subscribed and have given us a rating, I mean, there's nothing else you can do except for keep being awesome. And then reach out to us if you have some suggestions on guests, if you have suggestions on how to improve the show, or if you just want to chat. Let us know. We're happy to talk. And tune in next week.